Spoiler warning for Creed 3, if you guys haven't seen it, go see it. It's a great movie. Okay, now let's get on to the video. I haven't talked about movies on this channel in a while. Hell, the last movie-related thing I ever talked about was the entire Ezra Miller controversy, and before that, it was just pretty much me making fun of a movie I hadn't even seen when I ranted about Morbius. You see, in more recent years, I sort of fell out of love with movies. This was due to a couple of reasons, but for the most part, it was mostly due to my favorite franchise, the MCU. Ever since Endgame came out, they've been able to turn out some quality content, but it hasn't been as consistent as it used to be. The ones from Phase 4 that really stick out to me are, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home for obvious reasons. I also thought that Shang-Chi was a pretty fun film, and while WandaVision did have issues plot-wise, it was at least an interesting and creative concept. There was effort there. Movie snobs are going to roll their eyes at this statement, but my favorite type of films are the blockbusters. I can sit down and watch a sophisticated character study such as A Clockwork Orange, but for me the primary lane that I tend to stay in are the big summer movies. And lately I feel like the movies that I once loved have just become formulaic. Since Spider-Man No Way Home, I've only been to the theaters twice. Once when I saw The Batman, which I thought was a great film, and the next film I saw you could probably tell by the title of this video. I could have seen films like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, or Black Adam in the theater, but with the predictable rise of both streaming services and ticket prices, I just chose not to. And when I finally did get around to watching them, I was really disappointed. Doctor Strange served as a catalyst for why I even started this YouTube channel in the first place. And while that video is largely played off for jokes, it also did come from a place of frustration and honestly, sadness to see the MCU, a franchise that I bought in since day one, fall off so hard. Since 2008, when I was in the first grade and I saw the first Iron Man movie, I was hooked and I wanted more. I was buying the action figures, I started reading the comics, but then it just took a turn. For me, Thor Love and Thunder is an even worse case of this, as this is the first Marvel film ever that I turned off in the middle and I just never came back to it. But why is this important? Why does a video raving about the Creed franchise have to begin with me ranting about my lost love for blockbuster films that I once held so dearly? The answer is really simple. Creed made me believe again. The first Creed film was released all the way back in 2015. It was directed by Ryan Coogler and stars Michael B. Jordan as the titular character, Adonis Creed. It features Sylvester Stallone returning in his legendary role of Rocky Balboa. The plot's basic. The argument can be made that the plot is predictable and the audience knows every single main plot point that's going to happen before it even happens. That's true. So how does the film manage to have legs to stand on? It's because of the characters. I watched this film once when it hit Redbox. Yes, I am that old. And I remember enjoying it, but I was a dumb teenager and I thought that the best part of the film was all the punchies. And hey, those are great, but upon rewatching it, I was blown away with how unlikable Adonis can be at times. He's angry and he's frustrated with his position in life, constantly running from a past and legacy that most people would be honored to have with Apollo Creed, simply because he felt that his father walked out on him. This causes him to have a chip on his shoulder, constantly attempting to prove himself, whether it be him getting knocked out and having his car keys given away in Tony's gym, or punching out the rapper at Bianca's concert because he refers to him as Baby Creed. This culminates in a final fight where he's chosen to fight Conlon because of his name, but he's also criticized for not having earned anything to get this fight and him only fighting on name value alone. Adonis is put on the biggest stage against the biggest opponent surrounded by the most amount of people, and his back is against the wall. Adonis is mocked in this fight. The commentators question the threat he poses, but as is familiar trend for these films, Creed keeps on fighting, and for the first time he doesn't fight to escape the legacy of his father. This is something he learns to embrace as the film goes on and he takes up the Creed name, but instead he fights to cement his own legacy. Even though Adonis walks away with the loss, the boxing world is stunned. Conlon gives him respect, and everyone is excited to see what's next for the young Adonis Creed. Creed 2 begins with showing how far Creed has come since the last film. He's more level-headed. There is still that chip on his shoulder that follows him. We see this when he first accepts the fight with Victor Drago. Here, we see Adonis lose his cool during a press conference. He pushes Victor. More importantly, he lets Victor get inside of his head. Beyond this, we see that this is a fight that Rocky does not support, as Adonis isn't taking this fight just to box and defend his title. He's taking this fight because he's angry. He's angry because more than anything else, this fight is redemption for his father being taken from him before he was even born. Adonis fights Victor purely on emotion, and because of this, Adonis is sloppy, leading to him receiving a broken rib and internal injuries. And while by the end of the fight he is still the champion, he is a lot worse for wear and needs significant physical therapy. Here, it becomes clear to Creed and the audience that while he is fighting an intense and physical opponent in the form of Victor Drago, he must once again battle his past and accept the fact that while the past is important, it is unfortunately set in stone. There's no changing it. Beating Drago now will not bring back his father, so he must once again step out of his father's legendary shadow and fight for himself. For the second fight between Drago and Creed, Rocky is back in the corner of Adonis and consistently reminds him that the biggest opponent that he has to face is the person that Creed sees when he stares into the mirror. This is a crucial theme that plays out through all of these films, and it is one that I can resonate with heavily. You can have all of the skills and ability in the world. You can be as natural and as God-gifted as someone is like Adonis when it comes to boxing. But until you confront yourself and learn to cope and manage with your own baggage, you not only hyperfixate on the past, but you are also bound to repeat it, as we saw when Drago dominated Adonis in the first fight, similar to how Ivan Drago did against Apollo Creed. Walking into the second fight, the audience can see the growth in Adonis as a character. His offense and strikes are as intense and calculated as ever. The only difference being is that now he's using his skills with a more leveled head. He understands the fight at hand, is aware Ivan never had to go the extra mile in his past bouts, and takes advantage of this, taking necessary punishment, specifically from his ribs, with the knowledge that punishment now will mean a win for Adonis later. Contrast this to Victor Drago, we see a complete loss of motivation midway through the fight as his mother walks on him once again when she sees the Drago family facing another potential loss. This would lead to Adonis unleashing a flurry of calculated attacks that would lead to his eventual win. Before we move on to Creed 3, I also wanted to take some time to discuss Rocky's arcs through these two films, as they are just as compelling as Adonis's. Rocky is a character who also must face the past and accept it in order to move on towards a better future. When we first see Rocky, he's hesitant to train Adonis, outright refusing it initially, but Creed keeps on pressing the issue. The refusal to help him is no doubt due to the fact that Rocky knows the life of a boxer. He lived the experience of having to be cleaned up after, sustaining massive injuries. He's lost friends and has physically deteriorated over time due to the life that he lived. And despite all of that fame and recognition he has gained as part of living this lifestyle, he now lives in a future where he's all alone. Apollo's gone. Adrian's gone. His son is not in close contact with him. Rocky's seen reminiscing to gravestones because that's all he has left. Yes, people are still going to visit the Rocky statue, and once he returns as Creed's mentor, he's met with great respect in the boxing world, but his whole life was boxing, and as a result, once the fighting stopped, so did living for Rocky Balboa. The second film features an arc where Rocky must confront two major things. One is the guilt over the death of Apollo, as he failed to throw in the towel for him, and the second is coming to terms with the fact that he may have not been the best father to his son. He makes the claim earlier in the film that he tried to get his son into boxing, but it just wasn't for him. As the audience, we can make the assumption that because of all of this, and because boxing is all Rocky knows, once his son cut that out, Rocky didn't know how to approach raising a child, as boxing was the connective tissue of Rocky's entire existence. Rocky's arc ends off nicely, as upon Adonis and Bianca having their child, Rocky takes his experience and uses it as motivation to finally contact his son, leaving Creed on his own to tend to his own career, and leaving Rocky to become the father he couldn't be in the past. Creed 3 begins with a flashback sequence from Adonis' childhood. Here we see that he's with his friend Damien, who would help take Creed's anger towards life and turn it into a love for the sport of boxing. Then, one night, Adonis comes across a man who used to look after him in foster care. It is later revealed in the film that this man, Leon, would beat on Adonis as a child, and once he sees Leon outside the liquor store, Creed snaps and attacks the man, leading to Leon's friends jumping Adonis. Damien would eventually get involved, where he pulls out a gun, the cops get involved, and Adonis runs, leaving Damien to get arrested. Fast forward to current times, Creed's daughter's grown. Creed's on the final match of his career, and he's focusing on training the next generation of fighters. He's done all that he set out to do. He's cemented his legacy, and now it's time for him to take a step back from boxing. All of this changes though when Damien comes back into Creed's life. He was locked up as a young adult, and now he's a man, hardened by his experience in prison and angry at the fact that he had to watch Creed live the life he's always dreamed of but couldn't act upon because he's been locked behind a cell. Adonis takes pity on Damien. Why wouldn't you? That's your former friend. He agrees to help teach him in the hopes of getting him to the professional level of boxing, but Damien does not have time for hope. Unlike Creed, he wasn't offered a get out of jail free card, and time is not on his side. If he isn't going to win the world title now, it's likely it's never going to happen. This leads to Damian orchestrating a string of events that would see him named #1 contender against Creed's #1 student, Felix Chavez. Despite his lack of training and experience in a professional setting, the fight is completely one-sided in favor of Damian. He throws punches people normally don't throw. He fights dirty. He fights desperately. In a weird sort of way, he fights like Creed did, all the way back in his first fight against Conlan. The only difference being, Damian doesn't have time on his side. It's now or never, and he has to do everything he can to secure his spot at the top. A spot that he could have gained much earlier in life, but circumstances prevented him from his rise to the top. Once crowned the champion, Adonis becomes aware of the game that Damian was playing. A confrontation ensues where Damian calls Adonis a coward. "You always run," he says. "That's what you're good at." This leads to Adonis stepping out of retirement for one more fight. Quite possibly the biggest fight of his career against Damian Anderson. As the fight ramps up, the movie does an interesting visual effect, as all the two men can see is each other. No fans, no family, no team, just the battle that they are locked into. This is then furthered when a cage appears around the ring, forcing Adonis in a mental position where he can't run. Once again, he must face his past mistakes head on and make them right the only way he knows how, by fighting. The match would end with Creed knocking out Damian once again, becoming the heavyweight champion. The fight doesn't end there, however, as the pair have one more confrontation, where Adonis has to do something even harder than fighting. He has to talk to Damian. Throughout the entire franchise, it's been very clear, Creed is a fighter. That's how he copes with his past, and that's how he's gotten his future to where it's at right now. He's perfected the art of fighting physically, but now, in order to move on, he has to deal with things on a more emotional level. The two are eventually able to reconcile about the past, and the film ends with Adonis and his family alone in the boxing ring, celebrating the championship victory. I rediscovered the Creed franchise at just the right time in my life. While I might not be boxing or share the exact same personal struggles of the titular character, I find myself going through a deep and personal journey where I have to accept and confront a lot of flaws of the past, and it's not easy. But the character of Adonis Creed truly inspires me. More than making me crave more films from the Creed franchise, this trilogy of movies left me feeling a lot more than I thought I ever would, as Adonis is like myself and like most other people, deeply flawed, burdened with anger or inaction from the past, but forced to confront those fears and insecurities. He fails, he gets angry, and at times he gets pretty damn unlikable. But like everyone trying to better themselves, Adonis keeps on rising to the occasion. There are so many moments in this franchise where Creed can't just punch his way out of issues like he's accustomed to doing. He has to step back from situations and reflect. He has to evaluate himself, and that's why he keeps on succeeding. While each film in the franchise contains a unique villain, it can be argued that the overarching opponent Adonis is constantly at odds with is himself. And throughout the course of these three films, he realizes that as much as he wants to change the past, he can't. He must accept that mistakes only remain mistakes if you don't do anything about them. If he lost to Drago once and then didn't work on himself for the second fight, then yes, that entire experience would have been a complete and utter mistake. But he took time off, he reflected, and he came back smarter and stronger, not just in touch with his body, but also his mind, confident in the fact that he can do better. On the surface, these movies are really fun boxing movies, but the more I thought about these films and I applied the themes to my own life, I realized that these are so much more than that. These films are full of heart, style, and life lessons, due in no small part to the main character, and that is why the character of Adonis Creed is nothing short of inspiring. Thank you guys so much for watching. I definitely did enjoy doing more of a character analysis type video for this one. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, take care.